what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mad Scientist Financial Independence Podcast. I know it's been a while since the last episode, but it's been a crazy couple of months as we've tried to sell most of our belongings in preparation for our big move abroad. I'm happy to say that we made it to Scotland, so now that we're finally settled, I'm hoping to increase my podcasting frequency, so look out for some additional Financial Independence Podcast episodes soon. I'm really excited to share an interview with Justin Cook from EmpireFlippers.com today. Justin reached out to me after listening to my interview with Billy Murphy from ForeverJobless.com and said he'd be willing to come on the show to dive even deeper into the topic of online business investing. Since I was already subscribed to the Empire Flippers blog and a fan of their podcast before he emailed me, I jumped at the chance to get Justin on the show to talk a little bit more about this stuff, and I'm really glad that I did. Justin's in a unique position in this space in that he runs a marketplace for buying and selling websites. So he sees it from both sides, and he's actually in the business of curating and finding good websites to sell. So his knowledge on the topic is vast, and I was really excited to talk to him a little bit more about, what to look for when trying to buy an online business. I know many of you really enjoyed the episode I did with Billy Murphy, so I'm sure you're going to love today's interview with Justin. We actually had some technical difficulties during the interview. Justin's based in the Philippines, and for some reason, I wasn't able to hear anything he was saying, but he was able to hear everything I was saying. So luckily, he decided to record his half of the interview, and then he just sent it to me afterwards. But I have to thank Justin for being a pro and rolling with the punches, because it was probably really obvious that I wasn't even listening to his answers based on the next question I was asking. But he answered everything like a pro, and after editing everything together, it sounds great. So maybe you'll be able to pick up on the point where I was actually able to hear what he was saying, but hopefully not, because it all flows. So yeah, without further delay, let's get into the interview. Here it is, Justin Cook from EmpireFlippers.com. Hey, Justin, thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show, Brandon. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, so just my audience may not know too much about you, so just if you wouldn't mind just giving a little background. I know you guys are doing some amazing things over there in Southeast Asia. Where exactly are you at right now?
So I'm actually in Davao City, Philippines, which is the south of the Philippines. I've been here for almost 5 years. My business partner and I started an outsourcing company here just about 5 years ago. And so we're based in the Philippines. We're both Americans, and I decided to move out here to kind of start this company, that we had worked for previously. So we were working with our major client was our previous employer. We basically outsourced our jobs and started a company in the Philippines.
No kidding. So how? Tell me a little bit about that transition. So did you guys plan this for a while? Did you have a lot of money saved up to make this move, or was this pretty impulsive and you guys just headed out there?
So we were making decent money working in the U.S. and in Southern California for our previous employer, about $70,000 a year each. We were mid-level management for this, kind of small to mid-sized company. And they had a real need for agents, for people, because a lot of their processes were manual. It was required that they're manual, and it was online stuff. So we had a connection from our previous company we had that failed, a real estate company, with virtual assistants. And so we said, look, hey, we have this connection in the Philippines. We think we can make this work. And they said, sure, let's try it out. And so we started trying it out, and it started working really well. And we said, there might be something here. Maybe this is our next business opportunity. And so we started exploring, setting up a full team in the Philippines and an office and everything. And then we pitched it to our bosses, our CEO and CFO, and they went for it. They said, yeah, that sounds great. We don't want to own computers or we don't want to have a Philippines company. So if you guys set that up, then we can just work with you, and you can outsource yourselves to the Philippines, and we'll have a good relationship that way. So we we went for it.
That's incredible. So how has it evolved since you've been there? I know you guys have made a few shifts since you've been out there. So if you could just talk a little bit about what happened once you got there and how things have changed.
So those shifts were forced on us to some degree. So we got out here and we had this relationship with our previous employer, and less than a year they started cutting back on us pretty dramatically. So even though they got us our start, they cut back, and so we were replacing them with new clients and customers, but just not really fast enough, right? So it was just it remained like a lifestyle job. So it was a job basically, and and it paid for our living out here, paid us a reasonable salary, but it wasn't taking off like we kind of expected it to. And then when they finally canceled, we had all these extra employees that were trained, that had skills that we couldn't use, and so we started building these niche websites, right? Small websites that are content based, that had some advertising on them, and we just kind of did that as a whim, just to kind of help them cover their costs until we get them placed with a real client for our main company, and we started building these sites, and they started to earn a little bit of money, and we ended up realizing that maybe we could sell these to realize some cash flow up front that would let us expand the operation. So we started selling these websites off, and we realized there's this huge demand for profitable earning websites. We weren't terribly familiar with the space before. I'd bought a website previously, and we'd done a little bit, but we didn't know the demand was there, so that it was so high. So we really started to focus on that for our business, and started sharing it through a blog and a podcast, and the response was just incredible. It was a lot easier than any previous business we'd done before, and I think there were a couple of reasons for that, but it just clicked like some of our previous businesses hadn't, and so that became our main focus was building, buying, and selling websites.
That's really cool. So obviously you must have learned a ton about what to look for in sites, and I know one of my previous guests was Billy from ForeverJobless.com, and he was a big e-commerce guy, and there was a lot of interest after that episode aired, and I've even had readers email me and say they've actually purchased a site, and they're looking and they're learning all about online business and things. So since you've been in the business for a while, and you no doubt can compare what you've seen online to what you were doing offline prior to that, but would you mind just diving a little bit into that, comparing the differences between offline and online real estate investments, just properties online versus actually buying a brick and mortar business, or maybe investing in like a rental property or something like that? How do they compare?
So one of the things about online investments is that you're able to get them at much lower multiples than you would be like a rental property. So it's comparable to talk in offline real estate in terms of years for multiples, in terms of like how long it'll take me to recoup my investment, whereas online you can talk about it in months. So for example, for an online investment, you may be looking at anywhere from, let's say, 15x to 25x. So those are the months of net profit you'll be purchasing the business or the website at, and how quickly, if it can stay the same, it would be expected to earn its money back. Now the problem with that is that it's a little more risky. So you may buy a website, and within 6 months it's down to half of what it was. At the same time, you have the opportunity there too. So you'll have websites that take off, that double or triple inside of 12 to 18 months. So there's much more volatility, I think. And you could say this probably 10 years ago or whatever, but then the real estate market took a bit of a turn in the U.S. So yeah, I mean there's some volatility there too. But I still think that offline investments are a bit safer in terms of less variation or less fluctuation. But online properties, I think, have a ton of opportunity, and because it's such a growing industry, or it's like an emerging market, that I think there's just a ton of opportunity to grab while it's continuing its growth curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the multiples are definitely very exciting, but yeah, as you mentioned, obviously if you're getting such good multiples, there's a lot of risk associated with it. So what have you found? Obviously, well, yeah, before we get into that, let's talk about where you're at now and what you're doing with Empire Flippers, because that'll lead nicely into what I was hoping to talk to you about next. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about Empire Flippers and the process you go through in finding sites to sell on your site.
So we were building out a bunch of sites ourselves and selling them off as little properties that people invest in. And we realized that we just simply couldn't create enough sites to meet demand. And there's a failure rate that comes with starting brand new sites. I mean, at least 20 to 40% of sites we'd start would make nothing. So what we realized is that there was a whole bunch of people that wanted to sell on our platform. We'd previously sold on Flippa, which is like the number one place, like the eBay for buying and selling websites. But our buyers reached out to us and said, look, the problem is I'm buying on Flippa, and you guys share everything publicly, all the earnings, everything, and then I get like a dozen copycats right after I buy the site because everyone goes, oh, I can recreate that site, and so you get a bunch of people competing in the niche. They said, look, can you just sell it privately and not mention the niche? And so we said, that's an interesting idea. So we started selling privately to buyers, and they started reaching out to us more and more. And then we said, well, there are probably other sellers that would like to do this too. So why don't we start matching these buyers and sellers up? And so we let them actually compete with us on our own marketplace that was, intended for us to sell our own sites. And we found just amazing value there. So there are these people that want to sell off, let's say, an e-commerce site that Billy Murphy has, or any number of the other guys that are talking about e-commerce, and they want to work on their next project. They're moving on to something else, and they've got this this asset that they don't plan on working on anymore, and they'd like to get some value out of it. So we have buyers lined up that are interested in taking over those websites and continuing to grow them out. Some people ask, like, when's a good time to sell? And I think a really good time to sell is when you don't plan on working on the website anymore. So when you've kind of lost that fire, that spark that you had when you started, it's probably a good time to get out. We had a website that we kind of dropped. It's making like $2,000 a month, and over a few years, we just kind of let it dwindle down to a couple $100 a month. And looking back, we probably should have sold that a little earlier rather than waiting for it to go down. And so I think that's a pretty good time for someone that owns one of these sites to sell, is when their focus is elsewhere, when they've turned their attention to another business. That's a good time to offload, I think. And we're there to help those sellers out.
Yeah, that's great. And the thing I like about your site compared to a site like Flippa, you seem to curate, the ones that you sell. Flippa's just, you can put anything up there, and there's a lot of, probably really spammy, nasty sites up there. But Empire Flippers, there's less sites, but the quality seems to be a lot higher. And when you go to Empire Flippers, you can see, something that presumably you or your business partner had written about the site, and talking a little bit, about what's good about it and what things have been looked into and things like that. So can you talk about just what the sort of process is when you obtain a site to sell, and what you guys sort of look into, and how much vetting you guys actually do?
Yeah, so one of the complaints we heard from buyers is that, with Flippa, is that, there's just so many sites, it's really hard to dig through and find the golden nugget, so to speak. And so, we realized that, some kind of vetting process where you limit the quantity, and focus on quality of websites was interesting to buyers. And so we said, why don't we do that? So all of the websites that get listed with us have gone through a vetting process, which basically means we've looked at the traffic and looked for bad link profiles. We've looked for sketchy traffic sources, fake traffic like from bots and that kind of thing. We've also researched the seller, so we've gotten information on them, made sure that their online profiles are real. They have real Facebook friends that are really commenting on their pictures and that kind of stuff. So there's some accountability rather than just some random internet person. So yeah, we look at a number of factors, including traffic and revenue sources as well, to make sure that it matches up with their claims. So that's basically the vetting process we go through. We deny about 30 to 40% of the listings that submit with us. That's right now. That may change in the future, obviously, depending. And then we list the rest, the ones that meet our criteria. Now, that's not full due diligence because, technically we're agents of the seller. We're helping the seller sell their website. So, we're representing them. So it's up to every buyer to do their own due diligence. But, I think our curation process just limits some of the crap that you might see otherwise. Like, we just let anyone list anything, it would just get really messy. So you have a better chance of finding a gem. It's easier, and I think you can trust the process a bit more. And when you're doing due diligence as a buyer, it can get messy if you're doing all this due diligence on sites that are clearly not going to meet the profile that you're looking for. Whereas I think with us you have a better chance. So I think you have to do less due diligence, or you have to do it less often to find the ones that are interesting to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else, you have a blog on Empire Flippers as well, and you give a lot of really excellent free content away to help prospective buyers do the due diligence. And You give a lot of tips, and I have to say your email autoresponder thing is just probably one of the best that I'm subscribed to. Like I can't remember I subscribed a while ago, but I remember you asked like a question or two about what I was hoping to get out of the whole Empire Flippers interaction really, and then you just followed it up with so many really good emails that came every week, and just have to commend you on that. It was really interesting, but as a buyer, it was very helpful. As somebody who's not dove into this sort of thing, it was great to get these great emails to teach me some of the tips of what needs to be looked into when you're thinking about buying a site. So even though you're a agent of the seller, you're definitely doing a lot of stuff on the site to help prospective buyers as well, which is great.
Well, we have the marketplace problem, right, where we've got both sides. We've got two masters. We've got the buyers and the sellers. And so although we're an agent and the seller, it's important for us to look after our buyers too. And most of our buyers are repeat. Close to half of the websites we sell are to people who have bought from us before. So I think keeping them happy and keeping them engaged is helpful. The content, I get beat up from some of my marketing buddies. They're like, look, you need to sell more in your emails. You need to shorten them. I guess they're too long a bit. But our thought is like if we can share more information and it's free. I think it helps people get to know us a bit better. Helps us to understand, or helps them to understand the process a bit better. And I think ultimately that does bring in more sales by being transparent about the process and sharing all the information that I think a lot of other places don't. So I think that helps separate us from some of the other either website brokers or people online talking about building websites and that kind of thing. And so we have a bunch of buyers that have said that, or potential buyers that said, look, I want more information on the sites for sale. And then some people on our email list didn't select that option or aren't that interested. So it's easy for us to kind of tailor the content to what they want. So I'm not hammering people with websites for sale if they're not actually interested in buying. If they want more information on selling a site, I can give them that information and not kind of bother them with the other stuff. And I think this is, we call this the choose your own adventure email list. So you can choose the bits of information that are interesting to you. And depending on what type of buyer or seller you are, you can actually further drill down and we can send you content that I think is more relevant to you.
Oh, absolutely. It's really great, honestly. It's every time I get an email from you guys, I'm always excited about it because you're exactly right. It's completely tailored to what I'm hoping to do, and it doesn't have anything else that doesn't relate to me. So, yeah, I definitely commend you. And that leads nicely into your user personas because, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat with online and business investing. So, you guys actually put together, I think, 6 different user personas. Each person you give like tips, and then you say what kind of sites would be good to buy and which sites to avoid. So yeah, that's an excellent idea, and it's great to be able to relate to the different types. For instance, I sort of relate to DIY David and Lifestyle Larry, and you give descriptions of each of them. Like DIY David's a tinkerer; he's looking for a site he can purchase and grow on his own by actually getting hands-on with it and things like that. So that must have been a really big success for you guys launching that, because it's such an easy way to understand exactly what you're looking for, and like you said, you can tailor the messaging to those different personas.
Yeah, I think it's we got the 6 different profiles, and we're really categorizing people, and not everyone fits every single thing. It's funny though, actually. I'm glad you related to the DIY David and the Lifestyle Larry. The Lifestyle Larry is a pretty rare one. Most people are more into the newbie norms or the portfolio Paul. And the idea is that some people want a more passive investment, where some people want to tinker with the websites a bit more. They want to play with it and figure it out and try to improve it. I like the Strategic Sally. I think they're harder websites to find, but basically it's when you find a website that offers a product or service that's a great match for your current audience or customer base, and so you can integrate that product really easily and get 2 to 3x revenue and profit per month on what they're currently doing, because you've already got the audience behind it or the customer base behind it. And they're harder to find, clearly, and we have a bunch of sites listed. They're more for portfolio investors, but every once in a while, one comes along that just fits someone really well, and they can look at a more strategic acquisition. In fact, when people are going to sell their websites, one of the first things we tell them, depending on the ticket price or the listing price, they may want to reach out to potential strategic buyers first before they even involve a broker like us. So they may have some others in their space that are going to see automatically the value in acquiring their e-commerce business or their AdSense site or their blog, more than a portfolio Paul would get out of it. So if they can start reaching out to some of their competitors and find someone that's able to buy it straight up, they might get a higher multiple or valuation than you would from someone who is just looking at it as a portfolio purchase.
Yeah, that's a really good call, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You just if you already have an audience, and it's easier. That's the thing. Like I'm not very good at figuring out how to get traffic. My site's grown just really naturally, and it's I don't in spite of my efforts, really, it's just so yeah, the idea of trying to grow a brand new audience just seems daunting. But yeah, if there was a good site in the financial niche that maybe you guys were selling, then maybe that would make sense for me, since I already have an audience. So makes
I really like your site's really interesting. I mean, you talked to Get Rich Slowly. I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, JD Roth. He was in the last one.
Yeah, sold his blog and crushed it. I think he had a post on there that talked about some other financial bloggers that had sold their sites, and one of the major buyers for some of those blogs was Quinn Street. So Quinn Street does like a financial and medical education space. They're in a whole bunch of things. But they were at one point buying up a bunch of blogs and bloggers that were in the financial niche, and they crushed it through a bunch of strategic purchases, strategic buys of blogs that are out there. So I mean, I think you're in a really good space for that. So there are people that are looking to acquire from the low end to the high end in terms of these blogs and podcasts, and you're building a brand that these people are going to be interested in over time. So looking at strategic purchase of your business would probably be a good bet.
Nice. Well, that's not something I've not really even thought of. So yeah, anybody out there thinking about it, let me know.
I'm open to acquisition opportunities, man. Give me a call, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that is just something. Yeah, it's so foreign to me. I just wouldn't even think of it. But yeah, that's the same thing JD said though. He's like, why would anyone want to buy a blog? And then he started getting just ridiculous offers. So.
You know why? Because it's authenticity in a space where there's not a lot of it. So you've got bloggers that are saying, look, here's what I've tried and done some experimentation, and this definitely works. And that's different than some like just kind of content-based website about credit cards or whatever. Like that's not what people respond to. They respond to podcasts where you're saying, look, here's what I've done, and here's how I'm looking to gain financial independence. And those are the things that really resonate with people. And so corporations get that. Some of the larger corporations get that, and they want to kind of piggyback on your authenticity because they don't have any of their own.
Right.
So they know that that's going to help their brand and their long-term like customer acquisition a lot better. I got a quick question for you. You guys talk a little bit about like Lending Club and some of the like alternative investments.
Yeah.
One thing I think is interesting, if you haven't checked it out, is there's a business called Realty Shares. And there's another one called Fundrise, I think. And what they're doing is it's similar, kind of like alternative investment strategy, but they do crowdfunding for real estate investments. So, let's say there's a 20 property kind of rental units. There's 20 rental units they want to purchase, and they're going to raise, let's say, $400,000 and like $1.2 million in debt. And so they're looking for people to crowdfund this investment, and they take anywhere from like $5,000 up to whatever investment you like. And they've got they introduce third parties, so builders that have done this before and had experience will kind of put together their proposal, and you can pick and choose the investments that you think are interesting. And some of them, sometimes it's like a 12-month return, sometimes you're looking at 3 years, depending. Sometimes they already have renters in place, and it's a really interesting model for offline real estate. And we're actually looking to put something together like that for online real estate that I don't think has been done yet. It's a really interesting space for investments. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. If you get a chance to check that out, your listeners like the model, I'd like to hear about it and see what they think.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put some links in the show notes, and yeah, that's something I've not even heard about. But yeah, that sounds interesting. So that's something you're looking into doing for the online space. That would be pretty interesting, definitely.
Yeah, I sent out an email to our list, and I said, hey, here's some napkin math. We were thinking about this, and it seems really interesting. Like if we, end up running these sites for you and let you be a completely passive investor, and we gave you dashboards to log into. We did like quarterly reports where you can get on the calls. Is that something you'd be interested in? And we got just a ton of responses. I've got an email string with over 100 emails back and forth, even like from guys like private equity that are saying, absolutely, we want to do something like this. And so we've been a bit slow putting it together because we're going through a redesign right now, but the interest is hot, and I think it's a really interesting space. If you look at the offline guys doing it, it's cool. It's really interesting, and I think we'd like to put together something like that in the near future. I think it'll first be like one-to-one investment, so an investor looking to buy one website, they do the investment, we run the site, and we kind of roll it out from there. Eventually go, the crowdfunding model, but I think that's a bit too complicated to start off with.
That's cool. It's like, just buying like a rental property and then having a property manager who actually knows how to manage a property, take care of it for you, and you just collect smaller profits, but you're still, having a higher probability of success because you got somebody running it that actually knows what they're doing. So.
Yeah, and it's hands off too, right? Like a lot of people we've talked to website buyers or investors that are like, look, I love this site. I don't know anything about, trying to put in the Amazon links or trying to find I love it, but it's not my space. So, I don't want to, I've got a day job where I'm making, $150,000 a year, and I just want to take a look at this, but I don't know how to get involved in it. I think this gives them an opportunity to get involved in areas that they wouldn't be able to. Like it's a DIY David purchase, but they only want to be a portfolio Paul, and it gives them an opportunity to play the game.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent idea. That's really cool, and I'm glad I'll be there to hear about it whenever you guys do get it all done and worked out, because, that sounds like an excellent idea. And I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of like long-term prospects, because these multiples sound great. It's definitely a really exciting space. It's very new compared to some of the standard investment options and things like that. What have you seen as far as long-term? You guys sell a lot of sites. Have you dug into any of the data to see how many are successful after a couple years? Or
most of the feedback we get on this is anecdotal. So, we've heard back from people that said, the investment dropped by about 40% in the last 6 months. And then we have other people that, like it doubled within 12 years, so they'd already got their investment back, within 12 months. So it's just kind of like the feedback that they choose to give us. We haven't gone around like systematically to find out. It must be pretty good because we do have, again, not most, just under half, I think, of our buyers are repeat buyers. So they've bought web properties from us, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months ago, and are coming back for more. So it must be pretty good for them. I do think there's pretty heavy amount of risk, though. So, there is some fluctuations, and it tends to be at the lower level. So, sites that are earning, let's say $150 a month or $200 a month have more variance than a site that's earning $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And I think it's just because it's not well diversified in terms of like traffic or in terms of monetization. So, site earning 120 could easily go to like $50 a month. So that'd be a huge hit if it dropped to that permanently. Whereas a site that's earning $3,000-$4,000 a month may drop by a couple $100 here and there, but it's not as dramatic a drop. So that's one of the reasons I think that often, unless you just totally you're like learning, you're a newbie norms, and you're just totally learning and just want to get a feel for it and mess around with backlinks. In general, investors should look at buying larger properties rather than multiple small properties. Because the stability and the growth opportunity is bigger. So if you're going to mess with the site, you don't want to mess with a site that's earning, $200 a month because you improve it, by 50%, you only go to $300 a month, right? I don't know how much time you spend on it, but that's only $100 a month in additional net profit. Whereas if it's at $3,000, you go up by 50%, you're at, $4,500 a month in net profit, which may make, a more significant impact in your, net take every month.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Billy Murphy has a post called Diversification that we talked about when he was on the show, and he said, the same thing. Why would you get 10 little sites and then be so stretched and not do anything good with any of them when you could, buy one, focus on it, and really ramp it up and like you said, you're dealing with much bigger numbers at that point. So yeah,
I love that. I love the the diversification strategy. You know, a lot of people, we talk to entrepreneurs because we're in kind of an entrepreneurial space, and we talk about entrepreneurship on our podcast, and we get people who are like, look, my current business. I've got a kind of a startup, a service business making $2,500 a month, but I'm worried because I don't feel like I'm diversified enough. I was thinking about getting into this, that, and this, and we're like, look, that's like a 5-figure a month problem. When your business is making 5 figures, then you can start to worry about diversification a little bit. But until then, it's just you should double down on whatever's working. If you found something that is resonating with your customers, your audience, or something, do that. Do more of that. Ask them, is there anything else they need? Because that's your client base, and it can get a lot bigger than you're at currently. And trying to diversify, it's going to get messy.
Right. No, that's great advice. So yeah, I want to just move on a little off that. And a lot of my listeners, these are people that are, good with money. They're on the path to early financial independence. They probably got a big chunk of cash in the bank, and they're maybe, looking maybe jump into this space. So what would your advice be to someone like that?
So, some of the easiest sites to purchase and take over, and probably more passive, would be a site that's earning via AdSense. It's got established traffic. It's been around for a while. It's been through some Google updates, and it's earning via AdSense. Another one might be something like lead gen. So, it's doing lead generation for, let's say the education space like Quinn Street. And they're working with Quinn Street, and they're delivering leads and getting paid for those leads. So those are more passive investments. They're generally content-based and sometimes like geographically based. So the way to expand those sites would be to add additional content around that niche. And sometimes it's actually add like localized content. So something around the education space in Toronto, or something around the education space in Chicago, and adding content like that would be helpful. And those are easier sites, I think, to run and to kind of understand. When you get into drop shipping, that's a bit more complicated because you're now dealing with vendors. But if you're interested in that physical product space, I'd say maybe an Amazon site is a great opportunity because you're selling physical goods, but you're selling it through kind of the safety net of the Amazon affiliate program. And it has better expansion opportunities because an AdSense site is normally content-based, or lead gen is really just content-based, whereas Amazon sites are selling a bit, right? They're presenting a product, and they're talking about the benefits and the risks and that kind of thing. So you can convert that to like a drop shipping site, and then you can go from drop shipping to an actual full-on e-commerce site. If your drop shipping site is selling enough, you can get a container shipped out from China and now start selling that and warehousing the products yourself. So I think there's some expandability there. So yeah, I think it really kind of depends on how involved you want to be. If you want to be less involved, lead gen, AdSense. If you want to be more involved, kind of for a cheaper site, look at the Amazon sites. Or if you're looking to spend a bit more, look for like a drop shipping site that you might be able to convert, to a full-on sourced e-commerce site. One thing I would warn about for your audience is that even though a site doesn't look great, it might be better off that way. So you get some people that say, look, I'll just convert this design, make the site look better, and that will improve the value. Whereas sometimes these e-commerce sites, they're awfully ugly, but they're ugly through testing. Like
Right.
The owner tested and realized that the buyers are more comfortable with this 2004 looking website, and it sells more that way. So I'd be a bit careful when I start looking at adjusting design because that may have been already tested through. But I like the idea of moving down the rabbit hole in terms of going from Amazon to drop shipping to full-on e-commerce, similar to like an AdSense site looking to convert that to a lead gen if it's in a high-growth niche or space. There's a lot more monetization you can do. There's a lot more profit to be gained as you move down the value chain.
That's really cool. I was just wondering what your opinion is on SaaS apps and things like that.
I think there are people doing it at a lower scale too. So I've got a buddy that runs a company called Fat Cat Apps, and they're working. He has a one of those. It's like a table press type thing. So it works. It gives you a table of options you can purchase from, and it works with WordPress. And he's got that, and he's got a couple of other web apps that he's worked on, and they're not like wildly successful. It's not a singular focus for him, but he's doing it. I just think that a lot of times people in the SaaS space are looking at a huge win, so they don't want to sell a business at $50,000. Say it's making $2,000 to $2,500 a month in net profit. It's just not the level. Like they're thinking, I want 50 million for my company. So until it's that huge win, they're not even interested in selling. And we see them a couple of times. Like you'll see it every once in a while, where one goes that has some opportunity, but often they're looking for the big wins. Like Clay Collins and Simon over there at Lead Pages. They're crushing it. They got a bunch of investment, and they're building out. I think they do Lead Pages where basically it's to help you with your conversions, converting email opt-ins and stuff, and they're crushing it with their monthly recurring. So there are players in the space that are building really, really good web apps. I think they're a good example, but there are a lot of people that build these web apps that just don't quite take off, and a lot of times I think it's because maybe they're not marketers, they're developers, right, but not marketers. And so we've actually done like podcasts for like non-marketers on how to market your product, because I think they're a lot of times they're selling themselves short. They're like, I built this, and they more care about like how it works functionally and less about how to actually sell it to people. And so they're like, well, functionally it works this way and this way and this way, but they're missing kind of they don't have a good product market fit, or they're not like really promoting the benefits that are interesting to potential buyers. And so, yeah, I think a lot of times from a buying perspective, there are some really cool web apps you can buy up for really, really cheap and in a strategic purchase. So maybe you already have a business, and this would be a great offering to them, but they're willing to sell for $3,000 to $5,000, whereas you can make $3,000 to $5,000 a month selling it. So right, there's a ton of opportunity in the buying space there. It's really hard to find those deals, right? It's really hard to find the one that's a great pickup for you. And we interesting side note, we use a piece of software to help track like our agents' time in the Philippines, so the work they were doing. And it was called Hivedesk, and it had been in beta. We'd like kind of worked with them through the process, and they kind of built it based on our feedback and others I'm sure that they had. And Joe my business partner, had another bit of feedback for them and tried to reach out to the owner. He was like, wait, what are you talking about? No, I sold that. You got to reach out to these guys now. And we're like, what? We've been using this software, paying, I don't know, it's like $100 a month at the time or whatever it was, and we're like, what'd you sell it for? Like, why'd you sell it? He said, I sold it for $3,000 to these guys. We're like, what? What are you like? You're crazy, man. We'd have bought that. We'd have paid up to $10,000 for that at the time. Yeah. And but he sold it because he didn't really know, and he just, that was kind of cool. Want to move on. It wasn't a huge win for him. Anyway, these guys ended up buying it and doing pretty well with it. I'm sure it's worth a hell of a lot more than $3,000. We used it for I think years after that. Continue paying the monthly fee, even when they raised it or something. Yeah, it's one of those things where if you're going to sell something and you've worked with some people or whatever, I mean, that's a good potential strategic opportunity too. Someone that uses your software as a customer. Your customers potentially might be interested in purchasing it from you because they see the value, because they're using it, they're paying you for it. So, right, yeah, I think that guy missed an opportunity there. We were mad. We were like, "What are you doing, man? Why'd you sell this thing and not talk to us about it?"
Yeah, that's hilarious. And yeah, what you're saying about not marketing and things like that, yeah, that's the exact type of software developer I am. Like, I'm worried about features and functionality, and marketing is just seems so foreign to me. So luckily you guys are helping me along the path to figuring out that side of the world. So yeah, before we sign off, obviously there's a ton of good content on your site for anyone that's interested in this stuff, but is there anything in particular you'd say to look out for someone who's hoping to purchase their first investment? Maybe are there big warning signs that that are maybe obvious to you, but maybe not somebody just starting out? Or is any good resources that you've written maybe that would that you could point people to learn more about what to look out for?
Yeah, it depends on what you're interested in. But if you're interested in, I'd say, building websites, a couple of people to mention, like Niche Pursuits. Spencer over at nichepursuits.com is great. There's some other great guys like Anton from Dropship Lifestyle if you're interested in dropshipping, or you've got Andrew Udarian from ecommercefuel.com talking about dropshipping and e-commerce. So those are kind of the builders that I like and would recommend checking out. in terms of buying websites or things to look out for, if nothing else, make sure you look into the seller a bit. So have like real offline contact with the seller. Make sure they have a real profile, because that's an easy win. It's an early win that you can do. It's not going to guarantee the site's great, they're not BSing you, but people are less likely to do that with their real information and their real persona. So I think that's a quick kind of determinant on whether or not I would get involved in the site. So that's a really good way to do it. But yeah, anyone interested in us, obviously you can check us out at empireflippers.com, or we have a podcast on iTunes, the Empire Podcast, and have a listen.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely recommend it. And yeah, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to talk with me. And yeah, sorry about those audio issues earlier, but it was tons of great information. I definitely recommend everyone out there go and subscribe to the email list and start getting all of those messages that are completely tailored pretty much to your interest. Really impressive, and yeah, I really appreciate it. And hopefully some of my listeners and readers will maybe dive in and let us know how it goes.
Oh, thanks so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, Justin. Thank you very much to Justin for taking the time to talk with me. I hope you agree that he just has a ton of really great information to give. It's amazing. I really love talking to these entrepreneurial guys, because their mind just works in such a different way to mine. And they just have so many good ideas. I chatted with Justin a little bit offline, and just some of the stuff he was coming up with is amazing. So I definitely recommend you head over and sign up to the email list and get all the good stuff that he sends out, because it really is a lot of great information. And so yeah, I really want to thank Justin again for taking the time to be on the show, and I'll see you guys next time.